In today's gospel, some of it is challenging to understand because Jesus is kind of making multiple references in kind of a heated response to an intense moment. But I'll tell you, in general, in today's gospel, we have a potential showdown between the Son of Man and the Roman ruler over Galilee, Herod. But before I get to that, I want to catch us up to where we are in the gospel narrative of Luke. Since you remember from last week, we had to press rewind on the story of Jesus, so I want to relocate ourselves in the story of Jesus. I do this often because I want us to, give you as many details and reference points as I can as you imagine the scriptures. But one of Pastor Laurel's and my goals is constantly to increase biblical literacy. And literacy starts with knowing the narrative, that there's a beginning and an ending to these stories in the Bible. And the same goes, of course, with Jesus and his story. So relocating ourselves. After his baptism by John the Baptist, Jesus then goes into the wilderness and has his temptation experience. And then after that 40-day experience, he goes and he finds people and calls them to join him, the calling of his first disciples. And then when he finds that group of people and calls them and they drop their nets and they join him, together they begin his ministry en route to the region of Galilee. And that's kind of how the gospel narratives flow. Jesus has kind of his preparatory stuff before the major ministry, and then it's a geographical timeline after that. He heads up towards Galilee and does ministry along the way, and he does ministry while in Galilee, and then he turns back towards Jerusalem. But again, while in Galilee, Jesus, when he went up there, he did all kinds of ministry. He preached, he taught, he healed people, and he fed people. And then while in Galilee, we have to remember, a turning point event takes place up there. The turning point event, being what Pastor Laurel preached on 2 weeks ago, was the transfiguration of Jesus on a mountaintop, where he was confirmed as the beloved Son of God. And then he descends that mountain, and he turns his compass towards this holy city that he names and focuses on today's passage, towards Jerusalem. And then he would continue with his disciples in his ministry along the way. Our gospel text today is located on that route to Jerusalem. And it says in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus went through town and village one after another. And then along that way, some Pharisees, some religious leaders approached him. And these Pharisees tell Jesus something quite startling. They tell him that Herod of Galilee, a Roman official, wanted to kill him. This is a staggering announcement, because this Herod is a very real threat. This is the same Herod that imprisoned and beheaded John the Baptist. And he was quoted just a few chapters ago in Luke saying specifically, "John I beheaded. But who is this Jesus about whom I hear such things?" And Herod demanded that this Jesus be brought to him. And here, on this road between Galilee and Jerusalem, Pharisees were warning Jesus about Herod. And now we might wonder why these Pharisees would seek to give Jesus this heads up. Because up to this point in the gospel, the Pharisees have been really combative with Jesus. calling him a blasphemer, ripping him for hanging out with the wrong crowds. And they've explicitly revealed and said that they couldn't wait to catch this guy in something he might say or do to get him into trouble. Not only that, Jesus, up to this point in the gospel, has not held back on the Pharisees either. He frequently and very publicly called them out, often denouncing them as total hypocrites. So it's really odd that the Pharisees would be concerned for Jesus' safety in this moment. They were not friends. So again, we might wonder about their intentions here. Perhaps they were sincere in their concern for their Jewish brother. Or, one biblical scholar ponders, maybe they were scheming. Maybe they were scheming to scare Jesus, try to get him to run away. Or maybe they really did want to bait Jesus into actually going head-to-head with Herod, with the hopes that the empire would finally just silence him. Nevertheless, one scholar comments, we don't know what motivates the Pharisees here. And it doesn't matter. What matters most in this text that we just heard, according to this scholar, is how Jesus responds to the threat. Again, here's the scene. Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you, said the Pharisees, and Jesus responded, tell that fox for me. Listen, I'm casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I'll finish my work. I must be on my way. And Jesus continued, how often I have desired to gather Jerusalem together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. And now the power of Jesus' response is in the details. In calling Herod a fox, Jesus slams the ruler as a wild animal. And not just a wild animal, a predator, a dangerous predator. And notice the contrast. What animal does Jesus, in contrast to Herod, what animal does Jesus refer to himself as? A mother hen. One animal, the image of violence. The other animal, the image of motherly love. The imagery of the hen is so very important. And it's not a random choice by Jesus. The image of a bird mothering her young is used all over the Old Testament to describe God. In fact, when God has an opportunity to describe God's self in the Exodus, of all the images that God could use, God uses the image of a mother eagle. I intentionally picked the other readings today that Holly read to show how often the image of a mothering bird is used to describe God. Exodus, Deuteronomy, the Psalms, Isaiah, I think in Ruth as well, all over the Old Testament. And here, Jesus responds by applying that great divine imagery to himself, revealing that despite imperial bullying, he will continue the mission from of old. The mission of motherly love and protection. I must be on my way. Like with the temptation last week, Jesus' committed determination is on full display here, and that is what matters. Like a mother, Jesus is determined to love and save his people. That is what matters in this story. This is another example that God's love will not be derailed, not even by death threats from an empire the most powerful empire that the world had ever known at that time. And this sort of bold persistence by Jesus reminds me of a story about the Archbishop Oscar Romero when his life was being threatened, and he would later be tragically and brutally assassinated. But when Oscar Romero, when his life was being threatened due to the challenges he was making to authority and the really wealthy and the powerful on behalf of the poor, it reminds me of this. Just before he died, in an interview with a Mexican newspaper, Romero reportedly said this: "I have frequently been threatened with death. And I ought to say, as a Christian, I do not believe in death without resurrection. If they kill me, I will rise again in the people of El Salvador. My blood will be the seed of liberty. So to the death threats, I wish they could realize they're wasting their time." In a sense, this is what Jesus was saying here in the face of his death threats. Tell Herod he's wasting his time. I have work to do for my children. Jesus will not be sidetracked. And such divine commitment to love is the theme of the entire Bible. If you know that, you know the whole Bible. God persists in order to love over and over and over again, despite rejection, despite fickle faith by the world, despite politics, despite brokenness of this world. Again and again, God is the mother hen who draws her young under her wing. And nothing deters God from doing that, because you, each and every one of you, are just too important. He is on his way. Amen.